Hey, everybody. Welcome to tonight's podcast. Tonight we are talking Miami Marlins baseball. Boy, are we going to have a fun time tonight, joined by Marcus Mortensen, a former college teammate of mine and David's, joined as always by David Swor. We're excited to have you on tonight, Marcus, to talk some Miami Marlins baseball. Marcus is a New York Yankees fan, so you kind of wondered why he's on the show tonight. Marcus lives in Miami, so he's got a good feel for what these guys are doing down there. I'm sure he's going to talk a lot about how pitiful that they are and how much they're not doing it the right way. But we'll have a lot of fun with this episode, this podcast tonight. We're pleased to be joined with you, Marcus. It's good to have you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, DJ. Thanks, David. It's an honor to be here. When you guys asked me, I didn't know to be honored or to be ashamed that you're that desperate to find the only Marlins fans you know, but hopefully I can give you something of substance, and we'll see how we do with these Marlins. But it's going to be rough, I know.
All right, so Marcus, if you would do this for us, can you just talk a little bit to begin with here? Talk about the 2019 Marlins, a team from last year. Just give us a little bit of a recap of how you felt things went well or things that didn't go well for this team last year.
All right. Well, the 2019 Marlins, where do you begin? It was a second year of Jeter's being the owner or the part owner and managing the team. And so they were trying to see what was going to take place with the Marlins last year. And they got out to a pretty rough start. And I think, they were looking at being at one of the worst teams of baseball. I think the Orioles actually beat them to that. But they ended up winning 57 games last year, lost over 100 games. And so they really struggled, especially some of those guys that they were hoping would start producing, and they just didn't produce yet. But the one positive thing is they do have a decent farm system. And so that's the one thing they're trying to build off going into 2020. But, yeah, 2019 was definitely a struggle, especially offensively. They struggled to hit the ball and just didn't have guys with power or big RBI numbers and stuff like that. So,
David, what do you think? What about your recap of the 2019 Marlins?
So I didn't get to do a whole lot of research today, but I think it's amazing that a team that had Christian Yelich, Giancarlo Stanton, JT Realmuto, all on the same team.
Marcell Ozuna.
Marcell Ozuna.
Yeah.
And basically looking back at what they got for them, there's almost nothing. It's amazing to me how long this rebuild has taken. Now, I read an interesting thing today. 24 of their top 30 prospects have been acquired since Jeter became owner. So I think they're heading the right direction. But like I said, just looking at those trades, it's just amazing. None of those prospects really have panned out, with the exception of their top pitching prospect now who came over from the Phillies. But it's pretty cool. Obviously, I'm a Yankee fan too. I'm a big Jeter guy. I think it's awesome that Mattingly's managing them. I think Mattingly's a great fit to do what they're doing, and they're heading on the right track, but it's just going to be a little bit.
Yeah, so you mentioned
what do you think
Mattingly.
about it, DJ?
You mentioned Mattingly there. Mattingly is now the longest tenured Marlins coach in their franchise history, and this is his 5th year, and that's pretty sad to actually think of it that way. The 2019 Marlins, these guys were 57 and 105. If it wasn't for the Orioles and the Tigers, they would have been the worst team in the league. In all of baseball, they were the worst team in the National League. To be honest with you, I'm amazed that they won 35% of their ball games. Just really rough. And it goes to show you that even bad professional teams are going to win here and there. They're going to at least win 1/3 of their games. It's just going to happen no matter what, no matter how bad you are. You're going to at least get a certain amount of wins. So I just was looking back on it thinking to myself, man, these guys were rough. They got nowhere to go really but up, which is good, I guess. But 2019 season, definitely one to forget. And, I love Don Mattingly too. I think you guys loved him, obviously, being Yankee fans growing up. And I just think he's doing as good of a job as he possibly can with the guys that he's got. You can only do so much as a manager. You got to have the talent to work with. And it seems like every year, like you said, David, he's just trying to rebuild every year.
Yeah, there was some bright spots. I didn't realize the Marlins pitching was actually pretty decent. Sandy Alcantara, or however you say his name, almost 200 innings. You know what I mean? 200 innings is a big deal in this day and time in baseball. If you pitch 200 innings, you're a pretty good pitcher. ERA under 4, if I'm not mistaken, or right at 4 with 200 innings, but he only had 6 wins. You put him on the Yankees, he probably wins 18 games. So, they had some bright spots and, some reason for hope, for this year and forward.
There you go again, David, with that 200 inning stat you got to bring up all the time. Nobody cares.
Hey,
nobody cares how many innings.
I know that's going away because we got openers and there's all these relievers. But if you can stay in a game 200 innings, which basically equals out to 6 to 7 innings a start, you're a good pitcher, man.
Until they had Tommy John surgery, then their 200 innings are no longer.
Yeah.
I don't agree with you, man. If you're pitching 200 innings with an over 4 ERA, you're just basically bridging the gap for somebody, or just pitching just to pitch, just saving some relievers or something.
You got no one else, yeah.
I don't know. I always fight with David about the 200 inning thing, but we'll go from there.
No, he actually, I agree. He's a good pitcher. I think he's going to be their ace this year. And so Sandy Alcantara, I think he's going to be a decent prospect. I don't think he's an ace on other teams. I think he's more of a 2 or 3 or back of the rotation guy, but he's pretty solid. So he's one of their guys that they're looking to this year.
So Marcus, that being said, how about the biggest strengths of this team this year, the 2020 Marlins? What do you think their biggest strengths are?
Man, their biggest strength, which is tough because I don't know if they have strengths per se. But I would say it's got to be their prospects. They do have some prospects in the pipeline that they're looking to see what they can do. And I think, Dave mentioned it, but when Jeter took over, they were 29 or 30th in the league in prospects. Their farm system was depleted. There was no one there. And so he built that back up, and now they're about, I think, top 5 or top 7 or 8 in the leagues of prospects. And so the guys are there. And so it's a matter of, do they have playing time for these guys? Are they going to get at bats this year? So that's the big question mark with these guys. But I think that their strength is their prospects. They got some good infielders, some good outfielders. Pitching, that's questionable. I don't know. We'll see who can rise up there in the pitching categories. But so I would say that's their biggest strength, if you ask me, their prospects coming up.
I'm going to jump in on what you were talking about there just for a second. I think when you look at pitching prospects, it's always you just never know what you're going to get. Like you were just saying, is you could have talented guys that you think are good on the mound, and they could just fall apart so fast. It's unbelievable. And I think the approach that a lot of these teams are starting to go to now is to develop the position players and get the pitchers and free agents,
the
ones that are proven. And if that's what the Marlins are doing, is developing prospects that are position players, and I think they're on the right track. And David, what do you think for this team as well as the biggest strengths that they got?
So I'm going to agree. They got a lot of prospect depth. Last year, start of the year, 0 prospects in the top 100. This year, start of the year, they now have 6. So that's cool. And I'm going to go on record on something. You are going to laugh at me. I like the Marlins rotation in particular. If you look at those guys, I think either 3 or 4 of the 5 are averaging better than a strikeout per inning. Some of those guys had a really low whip, several of them under 1.2, and all of them young. And so, in most cases, if they start getting a little bit better team around these guys, they're only going to improve. And so I wouldn't sleep on some of those Marlins starters this year. Do I think they're going to win the division or whatever? No. But I think as far as the way their team is built right now, the best thing you can say about it is hey, they got some intriguing starters. So I'm going to go with their starting rotation.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm going for biggest strengths. I like Alcantara, like you guys are talking about him already. He's a 23-year-old stud. He was an all-star last year. 2 shutouts he had. He's really good. I believe, like you were saying, Marcus, he's the ace of this team, I believe, but he's a 2 or 3 on other teams, which, that's still pretty good when you consider some of these teams in their rotation. So I think he's a guy that could fit in on a different ball club, and you never know. He may be a piece that ends up getting moved to a contender, somebody who wants a young prospect like that. They'd probably have to give up a lot, but Jeter would like to load up more with some more prospects. That'd be something that'd be good for him to do. So It's very possible that could happen. One of the other guys I like in this team is Brian Anderson. I believe he's their best player. 20 bombs, 66 ribbies last year. He had a 342 on base, which is really solid, over 333. Garrett Cooper drove in 50 runs. He's a young guy too. So they've got some young guys on this team that are pretty solid. It's got to be their strength, as you were saying. They don't have much, but they've got some young guys, and they hope to build on it this year. And hey, you know what? Since they get the crossover this year with the AL East, they get to play the Orioles 4 times this year. So
there you go.
156. So that's the best they could possibly do. So we'll go now with you, Marcus. Back to biggest weaknesses. What do you think the weaknesses are on this team?
All right. Well, the biggest weakness, I think, is their offense. We talked about their pitching. It wasn't bad last year. It kept them in games, and I remember watching way too many games last year, the Marlins, and they were in games. It was like 1-0, 2-0. They just could not put up any runs. They get a guy on base here or there, but they just struggled offensively. And as you mentioned, Brian Anderson, I think he was their best all-around player last year. I think he's going to have a good year coming up this year. But other than him, they didn't have anyone. They didn't have anyone that you can count on at driving that run, hit for power. Jorge Alfaro, he has some power here and there, but he also had a ton of strikeouts. And so if he can get his contact going this year, it made it a little better. But their offense struggled. But I think 2 things they did this offseason. One, they moved the fences in a little bit. So I'm interested to see how that does in the stadium. They've always talked about that being a stadium that's very hard to hit in. It's not a hitter's-friendly ballpark. And then the other thing is I believe they hired the bench coach from Minnesota to be their offensive coordinator, per se. He did a good job in Minnesota, had a lot of home runs there last year of that team. And so I'm interested to see what he's going to do as the bench coach for Don Mattingly this year.
Awesome. What do you think, David?
Yeah, so I agree with the offense. I do think it's going to be improved. They got VR, that's going to be with them now. They got Brian Anderson. They got Matt Joyce. They got Jesus Aguilar now. That's going to split some time with Garrett Cooper, who's interesting. So I think they're going to be improved. But I would agree, they don't have a lot of depth there, which I think you need in this day and time. We're getting ready to talk about the Rays, and that's where they really excel. And I think the Marlins are going to get there. But, it's a big drop-off from whoever's starting to whoever's behind them. So I'll agree. I think the offense is the weakness.
So I don't really have enough time to go over all the weaknesses on this team because, like you were saying, Marcus, there's a lot, and we could probably talk about that for about 20 minutes. But to me, they're just the worst team in the National League. They may be the worst team in baseball this year. I think the Tigers are right there with them. The Tigers didn't improve very much, so I think they're going to be right there with them again. Your new starting second baseman, Isan Diaz, he hit 173 last year. You can't really go too much on the stats with these young upcoming prospects. I get that, but he's got a ton to prove if you hit 173 last year. He's their starting second baseman now, so that's definitely a weakness. He could improve and become a guy that hopefully can lock down second base for them for many years to come. But you have a starter who hit 173 last year. That's not off to a good start. And you just mentioned, Marcus, you made a great point about Alfaro and his strikeouts. He K'd 154 times last year in 465 plate appearances. And that's 33% of the time he stepped up to the plate, he struck out. So that's a lot. That's way too much. There's some guys that even make an argument that strikeouts as a batter are good. I've never understood that theory. I don't really understand what they're thinking. I can't believe somebody would say that. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Sometimes these baseball minds outthink themselves a little bit, but when you are making contact, that is definitely not a good thing. And then Jesus Aguilar, he weighs more than his batting average, so that guy, I don't know, man, he's not very good either. So his weaknesses, he was an all-star in 2018, he had a really good year and kind of fell off a lot last year. So they got a lot of weaknesses, but I believe those are the ones that kind of stood out to me when I was going over this team today. So Marcus, what do you think about with going into the season? What's the best case scenario for the Marlins this year? What's the best thing that could happen to this team?
Man, best case scenario, I was thinking about that question, and obviously you want to say playoffs or the wild card or something like that, which I think that would be the best case, a wild card situation. But that's going to take a lot of things to go their way. Of course, in a 60-game season, anything can happen. They can get hot at the right time. Other teams can struggle. That's the one thing I'm excited about to see. They should at least be in it. Who knows how many games back they'll be. I think I was looking at the stats from last year. Through 60 games, they were 23-37 last year. But that was 10 and a half games back of first place. And so they were still way out of it 60 games into it. So I'm hoping they can cut that margin down some and be, 5-6 games back and, have a shot there at the end. But really, I would say the best case scenario is from this season, they need to get the face of the franchise. They need to get someone that can be a franchise player. Because when I say Marlins to you, I mean, who comes to your mind? What person's face, what person's name comes to mind? They don't have anyone. And they really haven't had anyone the last couple of years. I mean, you have Giancarlo Stanton. They traded him. They had Jose Fernandez. And then, he tragically died in that boating accident. But those are really the last two faces of the franchise that you can think of. And so right now they're missing an all-star. They're missing that face of the franchise. So best case scenario, they get a guy or two that comes out of the season and you can have some hope to look to for the future.
That's a great point, man. I totally agree with you. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I think the best case scenario for the Marlins this year is just growth. To see some of these prospects come up and really do well. Growth out of that pitching staff. Again, I think that's kind of potentially a strength for them, something they can really build off of. I don't think there's really any way that they're in the hunt for the playoffs or whatever, but you would just like to see them, proceed a little bit. And to be honest with you, of the teams that they're grouped with there, the Tigers and the Orioles, I think they easily had the best chance of improving the quickest. And so, yeah, I just like to see some growth. And, it's so sad to me that they had all those guys that we named, Jose Fernandez, all on the same team. And basically, the previous ownership just flushed, their window. They had a long window right there that they could have competed for a long time, made a lot of fans out of people. You think about the names that are in that lineup. I mean, several 40 home run type guys. I mean, they could have been awesome to watch. And basically they flushed it. So that's just really sad to me. But, yeah, I'd just like to see them grow a little bit and look at contending next year or the year after.
Yeah, so you guys made all the points that I had written down here as well. I'm going to read a little list to you here. Matt Joyce is 35, Francisco Cervelli 34, Adam Conley's 30, Brandon Kinsler 35, John Birdie is 30, Miguel Rojas 31, and Corey Dickerson 31. The rest of the roster is in their 20s. So these guys are young, and like you were saying, they got a lot of guys to develop. They got a lot of young players. They got a lot of prospects. So what you guys were all making points about with this team, trying to take a little bit of a step forward. As you guys all know, and you already mentioned it, David, just now, is it seems like the Marlins way is, and they've done this twice, and you can't really fault them for it because, sad to say, they got more World Series titles than the Cubs do in my lifetime, so I can't say too much. But this team will be absolutely loaded, and then they'll just blow it up. And then they'll be loaded again, and they'll blow it up. And they were loaded when they had that outfield you mentioned, Marcus, was unbelievable. If they would have kept those guys, are you kidding me? And they would have been loaded, but they blew it back up again. So they don't leave much of a window to win, and that's the Marlins way, really. And it's worked for them from the standpoint of 2 World Series. But it's got to be frustrating to be a Marlins fan when you start to see things start to kind of go your way. They start all over again. So, the worst, the best case scenario is that their young guys just kind of develop and they go from there. So what do you think as far as the worst case scenario goes now, Marcus?
Man, the worst case scenario is got to be these trade acquisitions they've had the last 2 years. They traded Yelich, they traded Ozuna. They're trading these top guys. They traded Realmuto. They're trading these guys. If they get nothing back from these guys, that's the worst case scenario. I mean, you have one guy, Lewis Brinson. He was supposed to be the centerpiece of the deal for Christian Yelich, and he has struggled so far. He's been a great spring training player, but he's just having a hard time keeping that average above 200. And so I think this is a big year for him. You got some of the other guys, some of those pitchers come out of those trades. So I think that's the worst case scenario. If you see these trades fall through and Christian Yelich goes on to win MVP again, or these guys just go on to have monster years, and you look back and it's like, what were we doing? You know, Christian Yelich, he was on a very friendly deal too. They weren't paying a lot for him, and so I think you got to see return on your investment. If not, it's going to be a worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. Yelich took a really friendly deal with the Brewers too, to be honest with you. He didn't take much money at all. He could have got a whole lot more money than he did. And that's a good point, because the Marlins could have shelled out some money and kept him happy, because he wasn't asking for some of these guys 350, 400 million type. He didn't get even close to that. So, yeah, that's a very good point. So what do you think, David?
So answer me this question. What happens if none of these guys develop? What happens if at the end of this season, we come back and say, well, Yamamoto, he didn't do anything, and Lewis Brinson didn't come out of it, and, you know, on down the list we go. None of these prospects moved up. What does a Marlins fan have to look forward to next year? Nothing. You know, just this constant, hey, we're rebuilding, we're getting this player, you know, that player off the scrap heap. And so worst case scenario is none of these guys move forward. And, you know, if that happens, then you got to start talking about Mattingly's got to be gone. We got to start all over with the coaching staff. Maybe the scouting department has to start all over. And then we just start this whole cycle all over again. And so in a large way, this is a make or break season for the Marlins. They need to see a big step forward from this year to next year. And if that doesn't happen, I mean, I don't know where you go from here.
That's a good point. You know, and you guys mentioned all the things that I had down for that as well. But I think another thing we talked about is Alcantara and, you know, Caleb Smith and some of the guys that they got in the rotation there. If they end up just going backwards at the deadline and just trading those guys, I mean, we already know they're going to have a bad year, but if they're starting to throw those guys away too, they're going to be even more shambles. So it's going to be tough. There's no doubt. I mean, we can't really sugarcoat too much with this team. You know, they are what they are. They're gonna have a rough year, no doubt. I mean, I think, Marcus, when you're saying a 60-game season, that's the best thing for them and the Tigers and the Orioles by far, is just get on fire somehow, you know, and win some games. And if you get lucky enough, you know, you can have a good season. I won't say sneak into the playoffs, because that's not going to happen, but, you know, maybe they can get out of the cellar. I think that would be good for them, is if they don't finish last, you know. That would be a step forward for these guys, and maybe they can build off of that going into next year, get some confidence for these young guys and get them more playing time and kind of go off of that. So, all right, so here we go, Marcus. I'm going to give you the names of the guys that they lost on the team. So the guys that are no longer with them. After I read the names, I want you to give me the one guy that you feel that they're going to miss the most on this year's team, okay? So on the offseason, they lost Starlin Castro, went to the Nationals. They lost Neil Walker to free agency. Curtis Granderson retired. Sergio Romo went to the Twins. And Martin Prado retired. Of those 5 guys, who do you think hurts them the worst?
I mean, honestly, none of them. I don't think losing any of those guys is a big loss for the Marlins. I think you lose some veteran leadership on that team when you lose some of those guys, like a Neil Walker. I think, you know, he stepped up and he had a good veteran presence. The same thing with Prado and Granderson. But really, those guys, they were just taking at bats away from these prospects. And these prospects, they need these at bats, especially in the 60-game season. And the minor leagues, you know, are not what they were or what they were going to be. So these guys, they need to get their at bats in. And so I don't think they're going to miss those guys as much. Especially, they did get some veterans to replace them too. So I'm interested to see how they gel. But yeah, those guys, you know, they did their job. They filled in, but maybe Starlin Castro would be the youngest one of that group, I think. And you know, he was pretty solid as a second baseman.
Future Hall of Famer, DJ, 3,000 hits.
I kind of knew where you were going to go with this one, Dave. Do you think it's Castro, or what are you going to go with?
No, it's definitely Christian Yelich.
Oh, yeah.
No, I think I will go with Romo. And the only reason I'll say that is because their bullpen's pretty weak. They did a few things to improve it. You can tell us about Kensler here in a little bit. He had a nice season last year, and so that'll help them. Getting Stanek from the Rays will definitely help. But they're missing something on the back end. I pulled up the guy that they say is going to be the closer, Steckenrider, I think is his name. And obviously, he's got to have good stuff, or they wouldn't be tabbing him with that. But They could have used Romo in the bullpen, but the rest of those guys, I'm like Marcus, they're not missing anything.
I'm gonna go with Starlin Castro just because, like we talk about, David, that guy's good for 200 hits every year. It seems like no matter where he goes. And Marcus, we were talking a little bit about his career. He started with the Cubs and he's been bouncing around a lot. And that guy's a hit machine. And if he could put together about 5 or 6 more years of hitting like he does, he's gonna put up some numbers that are gonna make you go, let's look at this Hall of Fame case a little bit. And it's really hard to think that with a guy like Starlin Castro, but
what are you going to do with that, DJ? What if he gets 3,000 hits? He didn't dominate in any 10-year period. He's totally against everything that you're for with the Hall of Fame. He's made a few All-Star teams, but he's never been in an MVP conversation. So what do you do with a guy like that?
That's a tough one, man. I really have thought about this. If he ended up sneaking into 3,000 hits, all those guys that have it are in, and I don't know how you keep a guy out with 3,000 hits. And just a great hitter, he really is, and he does not get any credit whatsoever. I don't even know if teams. The average baseball fan probably doesn't even know where he's at right now. So it's just like he gets no love whatsoever, and he just produces year after year after year. And we were talking about this. He doesn't really do the Marlins any good right now. It's kind of weird. He's just not. I mean, I also would bring up a prospect and try him out. It doesn't really make sense for him to be on the team, and he's getting a little older now. And I don't know. He's really got a very interesting case to his whole career. It's really hard to get him figured out, really, so to speak. We could talk about him for about 15 minutes, I think, and just go completely off of what he's done in his career. But I think he's the guy I'm going to go with for them missing the most. Somehow it's kind of a weird situation. But another guy I want to mention too is Curtis Granderson. I just wanted to say this about Curtis. That guy right there, he wins the awards all the time for being a good humanitarian. He just retired. I just wanted to mention a little bit about him for a second. Granderson is a Chicago guy. He went to TF North High School and went to University of Illinois Chicago for college. This guy, all the odds were against him. He's not a big guy. He's a left-handed stick who can fly. He had a great career. That guy was a very good outfielder for a lot of teams in his career. Just wanted to mention, baseball lost a good one, especially a great human being when Granderson just retired here. So great job, Curtis, man. That was a great career as far as everything you've done for the game, for the city of Chicago. You've done a lot as well in developing the baseball here in the city of Chicago to help out a lot of people in need, to try to build the game up in the city, which is struggling right now. So hats off to you, man, and you did a great job. So Marcus will go on to who you think the biggest gains on this team are. These guys went out and got some players this offseason. So I'll give you the names of the guys that they picked up here, and we'll go for your guy you think is going to help them the most. They got Matt Joyce, Brandon Kinsler, Francisco Cervelli, Corey Dickerson, and Matt Kemp.
Yeah, did you mention Jonathan Villar as well?
I did not mention Villar. That's a good one.
Yeah, so I would say I think Villar and Dickerson are the two big ads this offseason. I think they spent some money on Dickerson too, more than they normally do. I think Villar could kind of fill that role that role that Starlin Castro had, just a hitter and gets on base and stuff like that. So I'm interested to see what Villar does, and then I think Dickerson there in the outfield I think would be just a good at bat too, and especially with the DH now in the National League, I'm interested to see who they have filling that role in outfield and in DH. So I think those are the two guys I look at.
What do you think, David?
Yeah, I actually liked most of the Marlins additions that they made this year. None of them were real splashy, but they're all solid. 20 homers. Dickerson hit over 300. Kinsler was solid in the pen. And that's probably who I would go with. The best addition would be Kinsler. Again, this is a young team, a young pitching staff. The bullpen is weak. They needed some help down there. And, they got a guy who had a 2.68 or something, ERA or something like that last year. And so I like most of the Marlins moves. You do worry about taking ABs from prospects, but you got to have somebody to come out and watch. You know what I mean? So, I don't think they went wrong with most of those guys.
Yeah, Kinsler was really good in the Cubs bullpen last year. Like you said, 2.68 is right on the money. That was his ERA. And a lot of things that I've been reading have them as the Marlins closer. So they picked up their closer, so to speak. I think he's going to be under the guy at the end of the bullpen there that gets the opportunities. He could be it. They're kind of projecting it right now. They're not totally sure if he's going to be at the end or not. But if you pick up a closer in the offseason and a guy like that, you did a pretty good job. But I think like Marcus said, I think it's Corey Dickerson. That's spent a little money on that guy. He had a good year last year. He had 12 bombs with 59 ribbies, had a 341 on base, 304 batting average with the Phillies last year. So he's a solid player. Like you said, David, you got to have people, that fans want to come watch. And, he may not necessarily be that guy, but he's a name. And, the average baseball fan does know who he is. And he's an up-and-comer too, and another guy that could help them in the future. And could be a guy that could end up being one of the guys that they maybe sign for a few years here and keep around. And I just want to mention Matt Kemp. Matt Kemp has had a great career. He's kind of on the downward fall a little bit. He's had a ton of injuries in his career. I don't think he's going to help this team very much at all. Maybe be a veteran presence for these young guys. But when you look at his career numbers, he's got 280 bombs, 1,000 ribbies, 285 batting average, a 337 on base. He's won a Gold Glove twice. He was just an All-Star 2 years ago with the Dodgers in 2018. So this guy, man, he's been solid for a long time. And the only thing that really holding him back, he's been hurt a ton, and he just can't seem to stay on the field. And it's probably going to end his career a little premature, but he's kind of hanging on here at the end, joining the Marlins. But, why not try with the Marlins with a team like this? Maybe you got a name there in Matt Kemp, and a lot of people know who he is too, and maybe he'll stick. Maybe he'll do something for you. But if not anything, he'll be there for the young guys. So they did a pretty good job. I was pretty impressed with their offseason. Wasn't too bad, but very good points, guys. So, Marcus, do you have any specific guys? This may be a little tougher one, but do you have any specific guys from the farm that you can think of, like some young prospects or even maybe some of the young guys that are going to be in this lineup that you think is going to be the biggest help for the team this year?
Yeah, I mean, I got a few guys. Of course, these names are not familiar to anyone probably across baseball, unless you're a diehard fan and you study the farm system. But they do have some guys that they're looking at, and I think even contributing this year. I think one of their pitchers, Sixto Sanchez, he's one of their guys that's supposed to be hopefully in that rotation. I'm not sure if he'll make the rotation to start of the season, but I think he's going to get some innings. Monte Harrison, he's going to be another prospect to keep an eye on. And then you got Lewin Diaz. He might take over for first base. They're looking at him. Maybe Jesus Aguilar starts the season, but some of those guys had a good spring training, and they might be able to find their way in throughout this year, especially not having a AAA or AA ball to be able to play. So, but there's tons of guys that they have in their farm system. You got JJ Bleday, you got some of these guys that are just, you don't know what they're going to do. So they get the opportunity, and we'll see who takes advantage of them.
What do you got, David?
Yeah, man, I would be super excited about Sixto. I read up on him a little bit. They said when healthy, top 5 stuff in the minors. 21 years old, mid-90s fastball. When he's been healthy, he's been great. Health has been an issue. I think he pitched about 114 innings last year, if I remember reading that right, which was a career high for him. And so, he could be an intriguing guy, possibly an ace to stick behind or stick in front of some of these guys in the future. So, and like Marcus was saying, man, they have a lot of intriguing guys. When you got 6 top 100 prospects and several of those are predicted to land this year or next year, it could be a fun time to be a Marlins fan, in short order.
Yeah, I agree. Sixto's going to be good. I've read a lot about him too as well. I'm going to go with JJ Bleday. He was the number 4 pick in the draft in 2019. He isn't really close. I don't see him coming up anytime really soon, but man, I watched him play at Vandy. This guy can rake. There's no doubt he earned that number 4 spot being drafted. And the Marlins, I think, did another good job of drafting a guy, and they're going to get a lot of top picks here coming up, let's just be honest. And they've got to nail these guys. And I think they got a good one last year. He's good. He has the potential to hit for a lot of average and some power. He's a lefty stick. He's another one of those guys that we're talking about for the future that I don't see him being down in the minors very long. So good points on those guys. And, the future is bright with the Marlins if they can keep it all together. So I'm gonna switch gears a little bit now. So, Marcus, we're gonna give you a little bit of trivia here tonight. So we're gonna see how you do on this, buddy. And then David, I've got a good one for you too, buddy. So,
All right.
I'm gonna start with Marcus.
Is this Marlins trivia? Oh man,
this is Marlins trivia, and I think you're gonna be okay. Now, David, you be ready to steal. But in 2008, the Marlins became the first team to hit 25 home runs with all 4 of their infielders. Who was the second baseman on that team?
2008. That's not Dan Ugla, is it?
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Nice, man. You would have got it, David?
No, I wouldn't have got it. No.
I don't know who the other 3 guys are, man. I don't know if I can name off the other 3, but
that was clutch.
He was good there for a couple years.
Yeah.
40 bombs one time, right?
He did have a 40-year, a 40 homer.
Yeah.
Man, Marcus not messing around. Good job, buddy.
Yeah.
Good job.
I'm glad you didn't ask me the shortstop.
Yeah.
Hey, DJ, I got a trivia for you.
You go, man.
All right, and Marcus, be ready to steal.
All right.
Who is the all-time leader in Marlins saves?
Ugueth Urbina.
Marcus?
I'm going to go Rob Nin.
Rob Nin. Marcus is a fan.
Rob Nin.
Rob Nin. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Rob Nin was the closer in 97. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
These Marlins, it's tough because they were only there for a few years. I mean, you don't have a long-tenured player. You mentioned Don Mattingly being a long-tenured manager, but you don't have many players who were there for a long time, so they were in and out.
So, David, I got a good one for you then. So, the Marlins have obviously won the World Series in 1997 and 2003. Who did they defeat in the 2003 World Series?
That's wrong, man. That's wrong.
Terrible. That's terrible.
Well, I guess my question would be, how did the Marlins get to the World Series that year in 2003?
Oh,
you remember that one?
No. That's a good one. Oh, man.
I've had this entire time is Marcus. I'm tabbing him.
I can't remember, but there was like a game 6 or something.
Oh, man.
There was something that happened with the foul ball.
Oh, no. I tell you what, that's sad that you bring this up. I kid you not, Marcus. From that point on, the 2003 team broke my heart, man. That team just absolutely shattered me. And until we won the World Series in 2016, I could not get over that. And when we won it, I finally got over it. You know, it still hurts a little bit, but there's no team in the history of the Cubs that broke my heart more than the 2003 Cubs, and you're a little turd for bringing it up. So.
That was awesome,
Marcus.
Sorry, man. That was awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you guys got a World Series a few years ago because, you waited a long time for that one.
Woo. So. You ain't kidding, brother. All right, so Marcus, we always have
I got a trivia question for you guys, all right?
Oh, good.
And either one of you can answer, right? But I got here 5 players that are in the Hall of Fame that played for the Marlins. All right, so these aren't guys that retired in a Marlins jersey, but these are Hall of Famers that played for the Marlins, and they are now in the Hall of Fame. Can you name those 5 guys or any one of those 5 guys?
Wow.
That's
we
tough,
should be able to. This is ridiculous if we don't. Man,
I mean, this is kind of shows you where the Marlins are, like in their history. Like, I mean, they don't produce Hall of Famers themselves, but they got a few guys that came along the way.
I bet I could get this if I had some time to think about it seriously, because they got so many guys that are close.
Yeah.
Not in DJ's world, but Gary Sheffield is a Hall of Famer. He should be. He played for him. They had several guys that are kind of like borderline guys.
I'll give you a hint. There's one guy that played for the Marlins in '93. He was a rookie that year. They traded him to the Padres for Gary Sheffield that year. He goes on to become a Hall of Famer.
Trevor Hoffman.
Yeah, he started with the Marlins in '93, inaugural season.
I would have never known Hoffman was on that team. I really wouldn't have.
I think he was there for a few months, and then they traded for Gary, which Gary Sheffield was a good player for him. He won a World Series in '97, but when he got second best closer of all time, that he traded up. How about Tim Raines?
Your buddy Tim Raines, David.
2002. Ivan Rodriguez, Pudge.
Oh, Pudge, duh.
Yeah, 2003. Mike Piazza.
Oh yeah.
1998. He played about 10 games for the Marlins before he got traded to the Mets. And then Andre Dawson. Back in the mid-90s.
Should have got that one, DJ.
I totally should have got that one. I'm disappointed and we didn't get Pudge. That was just bad. Pudge is the guy that you should get Pudge because, I mean, he won a World Series with him. And, I mean, that's their guy, obviously. So.
Yeah, those are tough. If you're not thinking about it, but if you're not thinking about those names, they're not going to come to you.
Right.
Man, that was a good one, Marcus. I like that, bud.
Really good one. You're the Marlins, man.
That's all we got. Hopefully one of the years they'll retire someone for the Hall of Fame, but we'll see. But I don't see anyone in the last 5 years on their team that's going to be a Hall of Famer, so we'll see.
Oof. Yeah. Who'd you say?
Starlin Castro, he might be.
Oh,
he's not going to retire as a Marlin, though.
All right, so
I guess they'll get one more pretty soon. Ichiro, he was a Marlin for
good point.
Yeah, he'll become a Hall of Famer. So.
Absolutely, he will. Yeah, that's going to add to it, and that's very, very true, no doubt. One of the best hitters ever by far.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Marcus, we're going to segue now to the fields. So Sun Life Stadium, 1993 to 2011, and Marlins Park, 2012 to the present. I'm guessing, I'm almost 100% positive you've been to both of those fields. Talk a little bit about both of those fields, which one you like the most. Talk about Marlins Park a little bit for us so that if we go visit it, what are some of the things that we can look forward to?
All right. The first stadium was the Dolphins, is where the Dolphins play. So it had like 15 different names throughout all those years. It kept on changing names, but definitely a football stadium. You get to that stadium and the dimensions are very weird. You had that big teal wall. I'm not sure if you can remember the picture of that teal wall in left field. And but it was wherever you would sit, you were facing the 50-yard line. And so it wasn't a baseball stadium. So you go to a baseball game and you get a sore neck because you're always staring at home plate from a different direction. And so it was time to get a baseball stadium. But the one thing I'll say about that old Dolphin Stadium is I had the opportunity to go to the World Series in '97 and also in 2003. And they would pack 70 or 80,000 fans in that football stadium for the World Series. And it was nuts. I mean, it was just a crazy atmosphere and just so many people. So when they did pack it out, it was awesome. But normally they would block off the upper deck. I mean, they only had 10 or 15,000 fans on a normal day. So, but for a playoff atmosphere, incredible. And then they built that new stadium, 2012, and it's a great stadium. If you ever get a chance to go and visit, it's beautiful. It's well done. Their big thing was they wanted no more rainouts because it would rain a ton in Miami. So they built that retractable dome. But sure enough, like the Marlins do, one game it got stuck and it rained and they had a rain delay. And so they had to reset the rain delay counter back to 0. And but other than that, it's been really good watching the game in air condition. Definitely just a very good fan experience. You'd be able to see the field from wherever you're at. You can walk around the concourse, visit the different concessions, and still see the game from there. I guess my best memory from that stadium is I got to go to the home run derby a couple of years ago with Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez and Giancarlo Stanton. And those guys were hitting bombs. I mean, they were just launching on. And Judge hit one of the lights. I mean, I've never seen someone put it up that high. They were putting them up against the glass, which was going to leave the stadium. So it was impressive to see those guys, their strength, be able to put that ball through that stadium. So that's pretty cool.
Great story.
Awesome. David, you ever been?
Never been. No, that stadium looks awesome. The few games that I've watched on TV, man, it looks amazing. That would definitely be a cool place to go.
Yeah, I've never been either. Marcus, if we ever head down to Miami and catch a game, I'll have to hit you up, no doubt, and go to a game with you, man. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm on a quest. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm trying to hit every ballpark. I know David's trying to do it too. We're trying to get to every single one of them. It's tough. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
I'm about halfway there. And Marlins, Park is one that I haven't been down to. I've never been to Miami. That's the only major city in Florida I've never been down to. So I'm looking forward to one day going down there. There's a lot to do down there, a lot of good things. And so definitely if I get down there, I have to hit you up, man. We'll go watch a game together, bud.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be great.
All right. So I'll be interested to see what you got to say about this next question here, Marcus. So I would like to know, who is your ultimate all-time favorite Marlin and why?
Ooh, all right, this one's tough. All-time favorite Marlin, and they've had a lot of good guys come through the system. The joke is they're like the farm system for the Yankees and other teams throughout baseball. But one of the funnest guys that I've seen play was just Dontrelle Willis. I enjoyed watching that guy. Not the best Marlin to come through. Of course, you had Miguel Cabrera and you had some other guys that were definitely a lot better, more talented. But he just brought the energy. When he pitched, you would triple or quadruple the attendance at a game. And he loved to hit too. So every time he would get up the bat, the guy would just swing with everything he had and just play the game with energy. And so, I would say he brought a lot of good memories, being able to watch those games and tuning in and seeing Dontrelle just have fun playing the game. So those are a few good years. I think 2003 and 2005 or 6 was when he pitched for the Marlins.
Yeah, he had a crazy windup, didn't he? He had a really weird delivery, man. There's no doubt about that. He was fun to watch. I'll give you that. That's a good one. I never would have thought you would have gone that way, but that's very interesting. Yeah. So what do you got, David?
Man, I 100% agree with Marcus. Best
Whoa!
guess. Man, when Willis was on, it was can't miss TV, man. That wind up, and like Marcus said, he was a good hitter too. He took huge cuts, man. And that's what I love about baseball, man. I love the personalities. He was a big personality, a fun guy. Obviously, he's on MLB Network now. And, I like to watch him. So, man, I 100% agree. Dontrelle Willis.
And honestly, I'm going to say this, that I'm not going to overstate it. He changed that 2003 team. Like when he came on, he just brought an energy to that team and he gave them confidence. And as a young guy, so I wouldn't, just underestimate his importance to that championship team as well. So,
yeah, he was tough to hit, man. You couldn't find the ball, So I agree. DJ, who's your homer pick?
So I thought a lot about this, and David, you're gonna be a little surprised by this, but I'm gonna go Gary Sheffield. And I looked at Gary Sheffield today a little bit, and he played most of his career with the Marlins. I was kind of surprised by that. Of all the teams he played for, he was with the Marlins more than any other team. Now, don't get me wrong here. He's not a Hall of Famer. He doesn't deserve it. He was juicing. There's no doubt about that. So I'm keeping him out. Okay? However, when we're growing up, if you're not in the backyard doing this, then you didn't grow up doing the same things I did in the backyard. So I'll tell you what, there isn't a single player I've ever seen in the history of the game to have quicker hands than Gary Sheffield did. Because if you're doing all this and you can still stop your motion and swing and hit almost 500 home runs, man, absolute talent. Just unbelievable. Not a Hall of Famer, but absolute stud. Too bad he didn't do it, because if he didn't do the steroids, I think he still would have made the Hall of Fame, just based off of what kind of athlete he was. But he did cheat the game, and that rules him out for me. But that doesn't mean that I can't like the guy. And I definitely grew up a big Gary Sheffield fan. So That's my guy, man. You guys threw me off with Dontrell Willis. I wanted to mention
Gary's a good one. I mean, he did everything that you tell players not to do today. I mean, his launch angle, like his home runs, they were line drives. He did not put that ball in the air. I mean, he just smoked that ball. I mean, he had so many hits where it just hit the wall because he had just no height to his ball when he hit it.
So I want to go back a little, Marcus, so that I hate to bring this year up, but that 2003 year had to be a little weird for you, man, with the Marlins going against the Yankees in the World Series. That obviously had to be a little different for you. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Yankee fan first, always will be, and so that's where my allegiances go. You know, Marlins are second. I love to root for them and cheer for them, stuff like that. So that year was interesting, but you know, I was excited because I got a chance to go to the game that year because they were in Miami, and I was actually at Temple. 2003, and me and Gus, our parents got us some tickets. We flew down, watched the game. I think we went to Game 5 is what it was, Game 4, Game 5, and got to see Roger Clemens pitch. And so we got to see that game, and you know we were cheering for the Yankees, but honestly, down in Miami, I would say at least a third of the fans were Yankees fans at that game. There's tons of Yankees fans down here, and so there wasn't necessarily the home field advantage per se. But it was a lot of fun, and I was definitely sad to see the Marlins win. But I was so happy for them if I could be. But the Yankees, they had come off of 4 or 5 good years there, and we're hoping to get back to the World Series in 2003. But they couldn't do it. But Josh Beckett was just too much for him that series.
Yeah, he was. Beckett was a load. He was a load against the Cubs too, man. It was. I'm getting off that year. Never mind. All right, so.
I will say when Jeter took over, his first day in the office, he came in, and that 2003 World Series trophy was next to his office. And he told me, he says, "I want that trophy somewhere else." So he had to move it very quickly.
That's awesome. What a great story that is. Well, hey, Marcus, do me a favor, man. Let's switch gears a little bit here. Give me either your best Coach Hall story or talk a little bit about what Coach Hall did for you in your life.
Man, Coach Hall, I was just thinking about this the other day. That guy doesn't get enough credit for what he put up with for us. I don't think there's a man in the world who has more patience and just a great guy. So that guy deserves tons of credit for everything he did for us as players throughout those years. We weren't always the easiest. I know that, and I look back at it now, and I just have so much respect for Coach Hall and what he stood for as a man, as a person, as an individual, and he loved us. He was extremely unselfish. I mean, I think about all the time that he put into baseball, and he coached most of those years without an assistant or a main assistant. And you guys, if you coach baseball, you know that you need assistants upon assistants. And the stuff that he did for us, I mean, he drugged the field, he, got the water, he threw the BP, he did it all for us. And so I appreciate Coach and just everything he means to me, and just a great example too, a godly man, and loves the Lord and great family. So I've always loved Coach Hall, and I think I respect him even more now than I did, which I did respect him back then as well, but I think my respect's only grown more for him.
Yep.
David, talk a little bit about Coach, man. You got to give Coach a little love tonight.
Yep. So I'm going to tell 2 funny stories on Coach, and I'll make this really quick. My favorite story was, I think it was our junior season. We were headed down south somewhere towards Georgia. We were getting on the on-ramp there at Chattanooga, and we look over, and there's a hitchhiker walking up the ramp. And we pulled over there and got him. His name was Hoss Cobb. He swore up and down he was related to Ty Cobb. We pulled her in the van right next to Coach. That guy was hanging out the window. Do you remember this, DJ? That guy had his arm out the window, and Coach just looked over and did like a double take. And so anyway, we took him where we were going, dropped him off the exit. And then when we got there, Coach was furious when we got out of that van. But it was just too funny, man. I've never seen Coach that mad. It was too funny. We couldn't be mad at him. He broke down that guy could have been a serial killer. And my second favorite story, this is going to get a little PG-13. My freshman year, somehow or another, Coach books a spring break trip to Panama City. And so here we are in the Rainbow TTU van on the strip in Panama City, and we're just stopped in traffic. And these girls were flashing everybody, whatever. And this car pulls up. It's a convertible full of girls. We're all sitting there, college guys, real awkward. And they were holding a sign that said, "Honk if you're horny." And they pulled up right beside Coach, and Coach looked over there and was just like, "Oh my goodness." And Jason Morgan reaches over and hits that horn. And right in Coach's window, man, he got flashed. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. So those are my two favorite Coach stories. But I'm like Marcus, man. What an awesome dude. I don't think I appreciated all the things that he did for us either, Marcus, until we got out of there. Like you said, I appreciated it then, but now I really appreciate it. I went to a 7- and 8-year-old girls practice today and brought 4 assistants with me. And so coaching all of us with no assistants, I mean, honestly, it's really amazing. But great guy, great role model.
Yeah, I echo your sentiments, man. He did so much for me in my life. Just a lot of things that he did. He was always there for us. Like you said, Marcus, when you're going through it, you don't appreciate him as much as you should. And then when you get out of school and you start to look back on things, man, he did a lot for us. And some of the things financially too that he did for us that we didn't realize at the time. We had a lot of the things that we had because of that man financially too. And he did a lot for us as far as that goes too. We never were hungry. He always fed us really well. All kinds of stuff that he did for us, and took us to his house all the time, and brought us around his family, and, made us all feel like we were one of their family. And, not just the baseball things that he did for us, but all the things he taught us in life too, man. Coach Hall, we love you, man. We thank you for all you did for us. And we just want to give you a little bit of love tonight as we were talking tonight. So with that, I think we're wrapping this edition of the Marlins up. And Marcus, if you got anything you want to add, or David, at the end here, you guys go for it.
Something I need to ask Marcus. Something that's really been laying on my heart.
Oh, great.
Marcus, how was it to live in the room next to Jim and Lee? Can you explain that to us, how that went, that year that you got to do that?
Yes. So, Dave, what year did you graduate?
2003.
2003. Okay. So I feel like you were there longer with me. I don't know. I just feel like, so I was there for a year when you were there, right? You guys were seniors when I was a freshman. For some reason, I feel like you guys were there longer. I don't know how it was, but yeah, I mean, I came from Miami, so I'm getting culture shocked just coming to Tennessee. And then I got these West Virginians living next door to me, and they are singing at midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, recording their albums. Who knows what they're doing over there. And it was quite the experience. But let me tell you, man, I love those guys. Love getting to know you. And you taught me so much, man. My freshman year, especially that second semester. I mean, I definitely grew up there, and you taught me all the secrets of where to go and how to get into the pool hotel and, all that good stuff. So, yeah, you did well. You left your impression.
Well, I just remember I was laughing about this today, thinking about it. I've always been an early riser. I've always just been a guy that got up at like 7 o'clock. And it's just always the way I've worked. And I remember one Saturday morning, for some reason, we were singing opera at like 8:30 in the morning. And I remember hearing peck, peck, peck on the door. And we opened it up, and there was Gus, sleep still in his eyes. And it was like, guys, it's 8:30 or whatever time it was. It was so funny. But anyway, those were some good times, man.
Yeah, that was. I remember, Dave, one story comes to my mind. You remember Coach Rogers?
Oh, how could I forget? He was my nose.
That's what I was going to talk about. He's throwing BP to you. I don't know if he was throwing a curveball or didn't break or just popped you right in the nose, man. Remember that?
Oh, I'll never forget it. I mean, now that I look back at that, man, like that could have been really, really bad. Like,
yeah.
Extremely bad. That could have.
It could have been bad for all your kids.
I still to this day have no idea what he was doing. Like, it blows my mind. It blew my mind at the time. I was so mad at him. I'm not even going to lie. I wanted to just take that bat and just bash him with it, but I couldn't see. I had coming out my nose and my eyes. So, anyway, whatever.
Well,
I don't know what happened.
Took it like a champ, man.
He wanted me to move on, and I was like, no. I'm it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, guys. Like I said, Marcus, man, thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you, bud. You're a great pitcher, third base, second base, shortstop. Do a lot of different things for us. Our senior year when me and David were graduating in 2003, it was a pleasure getting to meet you and be a teammate of yours for that year. And man, it's been entirely too long since we've seen you last, and we'll have to do this again with you next year. And like we said, if we ever get down to Marlins, check out a game down there. We know who to talk to and who to see for that. And so we appreciate it, man. And for all those people out there who joined us, all 11 of you probably, we thank you for tuning in. We appreciate everything that you guys do for us for our little podcast here, for watching. And with that, we'll sign off for the night. Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys. Great seeing you.